The billionaire's smirk didn't reach his eyes. He lounged at the head of the private dining table like the room belonged to him. The walnut paneling, the soft amber lighting, the muted city skyline behind bullet-thick glass. Two men in tailored suits stood near the door with the stillness of statues. A third sat in the corner with an earpiece, pretending to scroll his phone while his gaze never stopped counting breaths. Mara held a silver tray at waist height, hands steady, posture perfect, face blank, the kind of invisible calm that rich people demanded from service staff. The billionaire lifted his phone and tilted the screen toward her like he was offering a joke. "Translate this," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "One line, that's all, since you keep staring like you understand." A few quiet laughs rippled around the table, polished, expensive laughter meant to cut without making a sound. Mara's eyes dropped to the screen. Just one line of text, short, ugly, no punctuation, not a normal language, not even a full sentence. She read it once, silently. Then her throat tightened. Not from fear, Mara had learned how to swallow fear years ago, but from recognition. She looked up at the billionaire, then past him, to the man in the corner with the earpiece. The man's thumb stopped mid-scroll. Mara set the tray down gently. The clink of silver against wood was small, but in that moment it was the loudest sound in the world. "That line," Mara said, voice soft, controlled, "is not a translation request." The billionaire's smirk widened, entertained. "Oh, and what is it, sweetheart?" Mara took a breath. "It's a schedule." The laughter died so fast it felt like someone had pulled oxygen out of the room. She kept her eyes on the screen, forcing herself to say it exactly, because accuracy was the difference between a mistake and a body. "Midnight. Service lift 3, switch to manual, 2-minute window, no cameras." Nobody moved. The billionaire's glass hovered halfway to his mouth. The attorney beside him slowly set his fork down like it was suddenly heavy. One of the doormen shifted his weight, just enough to reveal a bulge under his jacket that wasn't a phone. The man with the earpiece stood up so quickly his chair whispered across the carpet. "That's not what it says," the billionaire said, still smiling, but now the smile looked strained. "It's not even in a language." Mara looked at him. "It's in a code." Silence pressed in on them, thick and private. Then the security chief, elegant, grey-templed, eyes like cold glass, spoke for the first time all night. "You're going to read the rest," he said. It wasn't a request. It was a decision made about her, as if she were an object being repositioned. Mara didn't answer. She didn't need to, because the real problem wasn't that they wanted her to read it. The real problem was that someone in this room had just realized she could. And people like that never let you walk away after they see what you can do. 6 hours earlier, Mara had entered the Meridian Hotel through the staff entrance, with a name tag that wasn't hers, and a uniform that didn't quite fit her shoulders. She kept her hair pinned low, her makeup minimal, her eyes down. The point wasn't to look pretty. The point was to look forgettable. Back of house smelled like bleach, espresso and money, hiding behind cleanliness. Every corridor was labelled, every door had a keypad, every smile was monitored by a camera that pretended not to exist. A manager named Lyle met her by the service elevator with the impatience of a man who'd never worried about rent in his life. "New girl," he said, scanning her paperwork without really reading it. "You're on private dining." Mara's stomach tightened. Private dining meant closed doors, non-disclosure agreements, and guests who believed rules were decorations. "I requested banquets," she said carefully. Lyle snorted. "Banquets are for weddings and conferences. Private dining is where tips happen. Don't mess it up." He handed her an earpiece. "Not standard for servers." "Wear it," he said. Tonight's party wants responsiveness. Mara stared at the earpiece a second too long. Lyle noticed. Problem? No, Mara said, and clipped it on. She followed him through a corridor that narrowed as it got closer to the hotel's heart. The walls shifted from utility white to soft grey. The carpet got thicker. The lighting got warmer. Luxury didn't announce itself. It simply removed discomfort until you forgot discomfort existed. They reached a door with no sign, just a brass plate and a keypad. Lyle entered a code and pushed it open. Inside was a private antechamber, with a bar, a sitting area, and a second door that led to the dining room. A staff member in a vest stood there like he'd been placed in the room during construction. Rules, Lyle said, voice dropping. You don't speak unless spoken to. You don't correct a guest. You don't look at their phones. You don't glance at papers. You don't repeat names outside this room. If anything happens, you call me, not security. Mara nodded like a good employee, but her eyes were already working. 2 cameras in the corners, 1 blind spot behind the bar mirror, a service panel near the baseboard that looked newer than the rest. The door hinge pins were reinforced, meaning the door had been upgraded for a reason. Lyle leaned closer. They're high profile. Mara let her face stay neutral. I understand. Good, he said. Then understand this too. That second door locks from inside. If they say stay, you stay. A beat. Mara met his eyes for the first time. Is that hotel policy? Lyle's expression flickered. Annoyance, then caution. It's what they paid for. He left her with a polished smile and a warning that didn't sound like one. Mara stood alone in the antechamber, listening to the hotel's quiet hum, the distant clatter of a kitchen that served people who never thanked anyone, and the soft hiss of her earpiece connecting to a channel she hadn't asked for. In her pocket, her phone showed 1 bar of service. That might have been normal this deep inside the building. Or it might have been engineered. Mara adjusted her cuffs, squared her shoulders, and stepped into the dining room to set the table as if she were just another girl trying to earn tips. And that was the lie she needed everyone to believe. Because tonight, she wasn't here for tips. Tonight, she was here for a line of text that wasn't supposed to be read out loud. And for whoever would panic when it was. No one told Mara to move. That was the first thing she noticed after the room froze. The billionaire still held his glass. The attorney's fingers rested flat on the table, spread like he was grounding himself. The security chief had taken half a step forward without meaning to, then stopped, as if the floor itself had warned him. Mara felt the weight of their attention settle on her shoulders. Not the loud kind, the quiet, predatory kind. The billionaire let out a short breath through his nose, almost a laugh. This is cute, he said. Very cute. You memorize 1 line and suddenly you're an expert. He turned his phone so the others could see it, as if exposing a magic trick. It's nonsense. A stress test. My team sends garbage like this all the time. The man with the earpiece didn't sit back down. He tilted his head slightly, listening to something Mara couldn't hear. Then his gaze flicked to the ceiling, toward the private elevator indicator. Mara followed the movement without thinking. The elevator light was dark. The security chief noticed that too. Why don't we reset? The billionaire continued, smiling harder now. You finish service. We forget this little performance. He looked at Mara the way people looked at stains. Something to be handled quietly. Mara inclined her head. Of course, she reached for the tray. Wait, the attorney said. He was younger than the others, mid-40s, perfectly groomed, the kind of man who smiled during lawsuits. He leaned back in his chair, studying Mara with professional interest. You said it's a schedule, he said. Schedules usually have context. Mara didn't answer immediately. She picked up a folded napkin and adjusted the silverware in front of him. An excuse to buy half a second. I said what it was, she replied. Not why. The attorney's lips twitched. And the why costs extra? A soft chuckle passed around the table. Not relief. Testing laughter. The security chief broke it. What's your name? Mara looked at him. Mara. No last name? He asked. Staff policy, she said. First names only. That's convenient, she met his eyes. So is anonymity. That landed harder than she intended. The billionaire set his glass down. Slowly, deliberately. You're being clever, he said. Careful. Clever gets mistaken for confident. He leaned forward. Tell me something, Mara. Where did you learn to do that? To do what? She asked. To recognize a code that doesn't exist. Mara kept her face blank. I read a lot. The security chief smiled. It wasn't friendly. So do I. That wasn't reading. Before the billionaire could respond, a quiet voice came through Mara's earpiece. Mara, Lyle whispered. What are you doing? She didn't touch the earpiece. Working. You're on a hot mic, he hissed. Security is asking questions. Finish service and get out. Mara's eyes flicked to the door. Still closed. Still locked. I can't, she murmured. There was a pause on the line. What do you mean, you can't? I mean, she said softly, they don't want me to. Across the table, the attorney stood up and walked toward the bar. He poured himself water without asking, his back to the group. Let's assume, he said casually, that our waitress is very bright. Let's assume she recognized a pattern. That doesn't mean she knows anything useful. He turned, glass in hand. But it does mean she noticed something. And people who notice things tend to keep noticing them. He looked at Mara, which can be inconvenient. The security chief's phone vibrated. He glanced at it, then frowned. What? The billionaire snapped. The security chief hesitated. Service elevator 3 just went offline. Silence again. The billionaire laughed too loudly. You see, coincidence? Elevators fail all the time. The security chief didn't laugh back. Not that one. Mara felt it then. The shift. The invisible line where she stopped being entertainment and became a variable. Who else has access to this room? The security chief asked. Staff. Lyle's voice crackled through Mara's earpiece. Authorized only. And unauthorized? The attorney pressed. None, Lyle said. We run a clean operation. Mara swallowed. That's not true. Every head turned. The billionaire's smile vanished. Excuse me. Mara felt her pulse in her throat. She could still back down. Say she misspoke. Say she was nervous. But the thing about moments like this was that retreat didn't reset the board. It just marked you as weak. There are at least 3 people in this hotel right now, she said evenly, using staff credentials they didn't earn. The attorney's eyes sharpened. How would you know that? Because 2 of them walked past me, Mara replied. And one of them didn't know how to wear the uniform. The billionaire scoffed. That's your evidence? No, she said. That's my warning. The security chief's earpiece buzzed again. He listened, then cursed under his breath. What? The billionaire demanded. The security chief didn't look at him. He looked at Mara. Maintenance team just requested manual access to the West Service corridor, he said. They used an internal phrase that hasn't been in circulation for years. Mara nodded once. That's the rest of the schedule. The billionaire stood so abruptly his chair scraped the floor. You're telling me, he said, voice low and dangerous, that you, a waitress, know more about my security than my own people. Mara met his gaze. I'm telling you that someone is moving through your building right now, and they don't care if you're in it. The attorney's composure cracked. This is absurd. Is it? Mara asked quietly. Then unlock the door. The billionaire hesitated, just long enough. That hesitation told Mara everything she needed to know. You can't, she said, because this dinner isn't just a dinner. The security chief exhaled slowly. What is she talking about? Mara didn't answer him. She reached into her apron pocket and placed something small on the table. A black access card. The billionaire stared at it. Where did you get that? Mara's voice stayed calm. It was clipped to a jacket in the staff corridor. A jacket that doesn't belong to anyone who works here. The attorney backed away from the table. This is getting out of hand. No, Mara said. It's getting on schedule. The room went still again. Different this time. Not frozen. Listening. Midnight is less than 40 minutes away, Mara continued. You can keep testing me, or you can start asking the right question. The billionaire clenched his jaw. And what question is that? Mara looked at each of them in turn. Who is this dinner really for? No one answered Mara's question. That told her more than any confession could have. The billionaire broke eye contact first. He turned toward the window, pressing 2 fingers against the glass, as if grounding himself in the view. The river, the lights, the illusion of control. You're assuming a lot, he said. This is a business dinner. Mara stayed still. Business dinners don't require locked doors. The attorney glanced at the security chief. Unlock it. The security chief didn't move. Not without clearance. The billionaire's head snapped back. I am the clearance. Not tonight, the security chief replied. His tone was careful now, measured. Tonight there are overlapping protocols. Mara caught the word and filed it away. Overlapping meant competing authorities. Competing authorities meant leverage. The attorney exhaled slowly. All right, let's reset the temperature in the room. He looked at Mara, palms open. You've made your point. You're observant. But this ends now. Hand over the access card and return to service. Mara didn't touch the card. You don't want that. And why's that? He asked. Because if I leave this room, she said, you lose the only person who's been reading the situation correctly since I walked in. The billionaire laughed again, but there was no humor in it. You think very highly of yourself. I think accurately, Mara said. The security chief studied her. What's the incident? Mara met his gaze. I don't know the payload. I know the choreography. That's not an answer. It's the honest one, she said. Someone is using your systems to move something, or someone, through this building without tripping alarms. They timed it to your dinner because you pull attention and resources, your noise. The billionaire stiffened. Careful. You wanted a translation, Mara replied. That's it. You're the distraction. The attorney swore under his breath. A soft chime sounded overhead. All 4 of them looked up. The private elevator indicator lit for the first time since Mara had entered the room. Who called that? The billionaire demanded. No one answered. The security chief was already moving, hand to his earpiece. Control, identify elevator request. Static. Then a voice, too calm. Manual override accepted. Mara felt the last piece slide into place. That's your 2-minute window, she said. The billionaire's face drained of colour. Security! Already rerouting, the chief snapped. But his eyes betrayed him. He was behind. Whoever was running this had planned for his response. The attorney turned on Mara. You set this up. Mara shook her head. If I had, you wouldn't hear it coming. The elevator dinged. Once, then again. Footsteps echoed faintly through the ceiling, above them, not outside the door. The billionaire swallowed. "What's upstairs?" Mara didn't answer right away. She listened, counted. "Someone who shouldn't be," she said finally. The attorney backed toward the door. "We need to evacuate." The security chief shook his head. "If we move now, we cross paths." "With who?" the billionaire demanded. The security chief didn't look at him. "With professionals." The word landed like a weight. Mara stepped forward, just enough to reclaim space. "They expect panic," she said. "They expect you to scatter. That's when mistakes happen." The billionaire glared at her. "So what do you suggest, waitress?" Mara held his gaze. "You keep sitting." The room stared at her. "You're joking," the attorney said. "I'm not," Mara replied. "If you move, you confirm their read. If you stay, you buy time." "For what?" the billionaire asked. "For me to finish translating." Silence. The billionaire laughed once, sharp and bitter. "You're enjoying this." "No," Mara said. "I'm surviving it." Another sound filtered down, metal on metal, a door opening where it shouldn't. The security chief cursed quietly. "They're on the executive level." The billionaire's voice dropped. "That's where the server suite is." Mara nodded. "And that's why this dinner matters." The attorney's eyes widened. "They're after data." "Not just data," Mara said. "Proof." The billionaire slammed his palm on the table. "Of what?" Mara looked at him steadily. "That you're not the one in control?" The billionaire stood again, rage and fear mixing into something dangerous. "I don't answer to ghosts in uniforms." Mara leaned in slightly, her voice lowering so only the table heard her. "Then you should start," she said, "because ghosts don't care who you are." A new voice cut into the room, calm, polished, amplified through the ceiling speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen," it said, "thank you for your patience. We're performing a brief systems check." Mara closed her eyes for half a second. "They're already inside," she said. The security chief looked at her. "Who are you?" Mara opened her eyes. "I'm the person who noticed the line you laughed at." She reached for the access card again, but this time she didn't offer it. "This is the part," she said, "where you decide whether I'm your problem or your solution." No one reached for the access card. That was the answer. The billionaire stared at it, like it might bite him. The attorney watched the door. The security chief watched Mara. "You have 90 seconds, the security chief said finally. "Explain why I shouldn't have you escorted out of this room in restraints." Mara didn't argue. She'd learned long ago that when someone gave you time, you didn't waste it asking for permission. "Because the people upstairs are not improvising," she said. "They're executing. And they planned around your response times." The billionaire scoffed. "You don't know my response times." "I know the hotels," Mara replied. "And they're faster than yours." The security chief's jaw tightened. "How?" "Because hotels don't panic," she said. "They isolate." As if on cue, the ambient hum in the room shifted, subtle, but wrong. The air circulation changed pitch. The lights dimmed by a fraction, then stabilized. The attorney noticed it too. "Did the power just zone isolation?" Mara said. "They've sealed off 3 floors. Quietly." The billionaire's voice dropped. "That's not possible without internal access," Mara finished. "Correct." The security chief's earpiece crackled. He listened, then swore under his breath. "Cameras on the executive corridor just looped." Mara nodded. "That's your maintenance team." The billionaire's confidence fractured, just a hairline crack. "What do they want?" Mara met his gaze. "What you're hiding." The attorney folded his arms. We hide plenty. Mara shook her head. Not like this. She stepped closer to the table, lowering her voice. You don't schedule a manual override unless you expect resistance. You don't disable cameras unless you expect witnesses. And you don't choose this hotel unless you want plausible chaos. The billionaire laughed again, but it came out wrong. So what? They kill me? No, Mara said. They expose you. That landed harder. The attorney's eyes flicked to the billionaire. You told me this was secure. It is, the billionaire snapped. This is a 5-star property. Mara didn't react. 5-star properties have more to lose than most governments, she said, which makes them easy to pressure. The security chief stepped closer. You're speaking from experience. Mara hesitated for the first time. That hesitation was enough. Who trained you? He asked. Mara looked at the door, then the ceiling, then back to him. People who don't exist on payrolls. The attorney let out a dry laugh. That's comforting. A sharp knock echoed, not at their door, but somewhere above. 3 short taps. A pause, then 2 more. Mara's eyes narrowed. They're signaling. The billionaire slammed his hand on the table. Enough. Security. Clear the floor. The security chief didn't move. If I move now, I lose line of sight upstairs. Then send someone else. There is no one else, the chief said quietly. Not who isn't already compromised. Silence pressed in again. Mara broke it. They're not after you, she said to the billionaire. Not directly. He glared at her. You keep saying that like it's supposed to help. It does, she said. Because it means you're leverage, not a target. The attorney's expression sharpened. Leverage for what? Mara placed her palm flat on the table. For a transfer. The billionaire stiffened. Transfer of what? Mara held his gaze. Ownership. The room went dead quiet. That's insane, the attorney said. You can't steal a company overnight. You can, Mara replied. If you don't steal it, if you force it. The security chief inhaled slowly. Blackmail. Worse, Mara said. Proof of complicity, the kind that triggers automatic clauses. The billionaire's voice was barely audible. In my contracts? Mara nodded. In your partner's. Another sound rolled through the ceiling, this time heavier. A door slamming. A raised voice quickly cut off. The security chief's phone vibrated non-stop now. He silenced it without looking. They're in the server suite, he said. We've lost that floor. The billionaire's hands curled into fists. Fix it. I can't, the chief replied. Not without tripping everything. The attorney turned to Mara. And you can? Mara shook her head. I don't stop them. Then what do you do? She met his eyes. I make sure they don't walk away clean. The billionaire barked a humorless laugh. You think you can outplay people who did this? No, Mara said. I think I can redirect them. Another chime sounded overhead. This one came from the room itself. The tablet embedded in the wall lit up. Private message received. The attorney stepped back. That's internal only. Mara didn't move. They're talking to you now. The billionaire stared at the screen. His face went pale. The message was short. Transfer confirmation. Pending. The billionaire's voice shook. How do we stop it? Mara finally picked up the access card. You don't, she said. You renegotiate. She looked at the security chief. And you give me 5 minutes alone with your systems. The billionaire snapped, absolutely not. Mara met his eyes, unblinking. Then you lose everything at midnight, she said. And I clock out. The clock on the wall ticked forward. 0 hours. 11 minutes, 34 seconds remaining. 5 minutes sounded generous. It wasn't. The billionaire stared at the countdown on the wall like it was a personal insult. The attorney paced once, then stopped. The security chief didn't take his eyes off Mara. "You don't touch my systems," the billionaire said. "You don't even know what you're asking." "I know exactly what I'm asking," Mara replied. "I'm asking for a sandbox. Read-only access. No writes. No deletions." The attorney scoffed. "You expect us to believe you won't copy anything." Mara didn't flinch. "I expect you to realize it doesn't matter if I do." The security chief exhaled slowly. "She's right." The billionaire snapped toward him. "You're taking her side?" "I'm taking the side that gives us optionality," the chief said. "Right now, we have none." The attorney rubbed his temple. "This is insane." Mara stepped back, hands visible. "You can escort me out. I won't resist, but if you do, you'll spend the rest of the night wondering which clause just activated." The countdown ticked. 0009:58. The billionaire clenched his jaw, then nodded sharply. 2 minutes, he said. "That's all you get." Mara didn't argue. "I'll be done before that." The security chief moved first, crossing to the wall panel and entering a code that made the tablet's interface change. Layers peeling back, menus appearing that were never meant for guests. "Sit," he said to Mara, pointing at the chair nearest the console. She did. The billionaire hovered behind her, close enough that she could feel his breath when he spoke. "One wrong move, and this ends badly for you." Mara's fingers hovered over the screen, steady. "It already ends badly," she said. "The question is for who?" She pulled up system logs. Not the obvious ones, but the secondary trails most people forgot existed. Time-stamped pings, access echoes, permission shadows. "There," she murmured. The security chief leaned in. "What am I looking at?" "False maintenance credentials," Mara said. "They weren't granted tonight. They were seeded weeks ago." The attorney frowned. "That's impossible." Mara glanced at him. "Nothing that lasts this long happens overnight." She traced a line on the screen. "They used your dinner schedule to predict staffing gaps. They mapped your habits. They knew when you'd be distracted." The billionaire's voice dropped. "Who?" Mara paused. "Someone who knows you well enough to hide behind you." The security chief stiffened. "Internal." "Adjacent," Mara corrected. "A partner." The attorney's face went still. "Which one?" Mara didn't answer. She opened another window, the screen filled with a cascade of permissions changing hands. Subtle, legal, terrifyingly clean. The security chief swore. "They're triggering conditional transfers." The billionaire stared. That clause was a safeguard. "It still is," Mara said. "Just not for you." She leaned back, finally turning to face them. This wasn't about stealing data. It was about forcing you to authorize something without realizing it. The attorney swallowed. "At midnight." "Your systems auto-confirm," Mara said. "Unless you interrupt the chain." The billionaire barked, "Then interrupt it." Mara shook her head. "You can't. Not directly." "Why not?" "Because if you do," she said, "you admit fault. And that triggers everything at once." The room felt smaller. The security chief asked the question none of them wanted to voice. "What can we do?" Mara looked at the screen again. "Change the reader," she said. The billionaire frowned. "The what?" "The translator," Mara replied. "They built this assuming one kind of interpretation, one authority." The attorney caught on. "You mean—" Mara nodded. "I introduce ambiguity." The billionaire stared at her. By doing what? By reading the line again, she said. Correctly. Silence. You already translated it, the attorney said. No, Mara replied. I decoded it. She stood. Translation implies intent. That's what they didn't plan for. The security chief looked at the clock. 000612. You have one shot, he said. Mara met his gaze. That's all I ever need. She stepped away from the console and toward the table, where the billionaire's phone still lay, face up. May I? She asked. The billionaire hesitated, then shoved it toward her. Mara picked it up. The room leaned in. Whatever you think this line says, she said quietly, that's not what scares them. She tapped the screen, pulled the message back up, and spoke, slow, precise, deliberate. This line doesn't schedule a transfer, Mara said. It authorizes a witness. The attorney's breath caught. A witness to what? Mara looked up. To betrayal. The clock ticked. 000501. The word betrayal didn't echo. It sank. The billionaire stared at Mara like he was seeing her for the first time and realizing he didn't like the view. A witness, he said slowly. That's ridiculous. Mara handed the phone back to him. It's only ridiculous if you assume the reader is neutral. The attorney's voice was tight. Who's the witness? Mara looked past them, toward the ceiling. The building. Silence. Then a sharp, incredulous laugh from the billionaire. You're saying my hotel is testifying against me? I'm saying your systems are, Mara replied. And someone very smart arranged it so they would. The security chief leaned forward. Explain. Mara exhaled. This was the moment where clarity mattered more than speed. That line you showed me, she said, isn't an instruction by itself. It's a trigger phrase. It tells the system how to interpret everything that follows. The attorney frowned. Interpret how? As corroboration, Mara said. Every access, every override, every anomaly tonight, logged, cross-referenced, time-synced. Not as errors, as confirmation. The billionaire's face hardened. Confirmation of what? Mara met his eyes. Of coordinated intent. The countdown clock glowed brighter against the wall. 00:04:17. The security chief cursed under his breath. They're building a narrative. Yes, Mara said. One that doesn't require testimony. Just records. The attorney shook his head. That wouldn't hold. Mara tilted her head. It would if the witness is considered impartial. The room understood at the same time. The hotel, the billionaire whispered. Not the hotel, Mara corrected. The infrastructure, third-party systems, independent audits, compliance layers you don't control. The billionaire turned on the security chief. You told me those were sealed. They are? The chief snapped. From us? Mara nodded. Which makes them perfect. Another vibration rolled through the floor, subtle, but wrong. Somewhere above them, something heavy was moving fast. They're accelerating, the security chief said, listening to his earpiece. Server activity just spiked. The attorney's voice rose. Then stop it. Mara shook her head. You can't stop a witness once it starts speaking. The billionaire slammed his fist on the table. Then what the hell can we do? Mara didn't answer immediately. She walked to the window instead. Below them, the city glittered, indifferent, endless, alive. Reflections bounced off glass and steel, breaking faces into fragments. You can change the story, she said quietly. The attorney scoffed. By lying? By reframing, Mara replied. Witnesses don't testify to truth. They testify to consistency. She turned back to them. Right now, The story is that this building observed a covert operation executed under your protection. The billionaire swallowed. And you can change that? Mara nodded once. If I become part of the record. The security chief stared at her. You want to insert yourself? Yes, she said. As an anomaly. The attorney's eyes widened. That's insane. You'd implicate yourself. Mara didn't flinch. I already am. The billionaire laughed, harsh and humorless. You think we'd sacrifice ourselves to save you? Mara met his gaze, unblinking. No. I think you'll sacrifice me to save yourselves. Silence. The security chief's expression changed, calculation replacing resistance. You're saying, he said slowly, we reclassify tonight. Mara nodded. From operation to intervention. The attorney paced. That would require a catalyst, a reason for elevated access. Mara's voice was steady. An internal threat. The billionaire stared at her. You. Yes. The word hung between them. You frame her, the attorney said. As what? Mara answered for them. As an unauthorized translator who accessed restricted systems under false pretenses. The billionaire's lips curled. You'd go to prison, Mara shrugged. Only if you let the story finish. The security chief exhaled sharply. If she's flagged as hostile, then the witness logs shift, Mara said. The system records your response as containment, not collaboration. The attorney stopped pacing. And the real architect? Mara's eyes hardened. Gets exposed by contrast. The billionaire stared at her, searching for something, a fear, regret, bargaining. He found none. You planned this, he said quietly. Mara shook her head. I planned for something like this. The difference mattered. Another alert chimed, louder this time. Transfer sequence initiated 00:02:49. The security chief looked at the billionaire. We're out of time. The billionaire looked at Mara. If we do this, you don't walk out. Mara met his gaze. I never planned to. The attorney's voice dropped. Why help us at all? Mara hesitated, just long enough for truth to edge in. Because whoever is upstairs, she said, will do this again, to someone else, somewhere quieter. The billionaire studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded once. Do it, he said. The security chief moved fast, fingers flying over the console. Flagging intrusion, authorizing containment. The room's lights flared, then dimmed. Mara felt it, the shift, the system noticing her. The tablet on the wall updated. Status, unauthorized access. Subject identified, the attorney swallowed. That's you, Mara stepped back, hands visible. Good, she said. Now, they have a reason to hurry. The billionaire frowned. Why would we want that? Mara's eyes flicked to the ceiling. Because rushed people make mistakes. A sudden shout echoed faintly from above, then another. The security chief's earpiece crackled with overlapping voices. They've hit resistance, he said. Not ours. Mara smiled, just barely. That's the other thing about witnesses, she said. They don't like being lied to. The countdown hit. 001:31. Get ready, Mara said. This is where the power shifts. The shift didn't announce itself. It whispered. A pressure change in the room. A recalibration so subtle most people would have missed it. But Mara felt it in her bones, the way you felt an elevator start moving before the numbers changed. The tablet on the wall refreshed. Containment, protocol active. The billionaire exhaled slowly. So that's it. You're the threat now. Mara nodded. On paper. The attorney rubbed his face. I don't like this. No one does, Mara said. That's why it works. The security chief was already talking into his earpiece, voice clipped and precise. Containment teams rerouted. Lock executive stairwells. I want eyes on the server suite and nowhere else. A pause. Negative, came the reply. We're losing visual. They're moving blind. Mara looked up sharply. They cut your feeds? Yes, the chief said. Which means, they don't know you flagged me, Mara finished. Yet. The billionaire's jaw tightened. How long do we have? Mara checked the clock. 00:00:58. They expected compliance, she said. Not resistance. That buys us seconds. The attorney laughed, sharp and brittle. Seconds. Fantastic. A new sound cut through the room, this one unmistakable. The lock on their door disengaged. Everyone froze. The handle turned slowly, deliberately, like whoever was on the other side wanted them to hear it. The security chief stepped forward, hand hovering near his jacket. Nobody move. The door opened just enough for a man to slip through. He was tall, polished, mid-40s, wearing a tailored grey suit that looked expensive without trying. No visible earpiece. No weapon in sight. He smiled like he owned the place. There you are, he said pleasantly. I was wondering when you'd notice. The billionaire stared. You. The attorney went pale. This is a restricted floor. The man waved a hand. Tonight? Not really. Mara studied him. Calm. Too calm. This was not a foot soldier. You're late, Mara said. His smile widened. And you're early. The security chief squared his shoulders. You're trespassing. The man chuckled. I prefer misplaced. He turned his attention fully to Mara, eyes sharp now. You're the translator. Mara didn't answer. I told them not to underestimate the staff, he continued lightly. They never listen. The billionaire snapped. What do you want? The man sighed as if disappointed. Efficiency. Clean execution. Instead, I get theatre. He gestured at the tablet. Containment? Very clever, but unnecessary. The attorney backed away. Security? Busy, the man said. Your teams are responding to a fire alarm that doesn't exist. Mara's pulse spiked. You pulled them off grid. Of course, he replied. I needed privacy. The billionaire's voice shook with anger. You used me. The man tilted his head. You let yourself be used. Silence thickened. Mara stepped forward half a pace. You didn't plan for me. The man smiled at her like a chess player acknowledging a decent move. I planned for noise, your signal. He looked around the room. You know, I almost pulled the trigger early when she started talking. The attorney whispered, Trigger? The man ignored him, but then I realized you were useful. Mara held his gaze. For what? For flushing out loyalty, he said. Look at them. Scared, confused, willing to burn you to save themselves. The billionaire bristled. Careful. The man shrugged. Am I wrong? Mara spoke quietly. You lost control the moment you walked in. His smile faded, just a fraction. Did I? He asked. Mara lifted her chin. You wanted a witness. You got one. The man laughed softly. You think the system cares who speaks? No, Mara said. But it cares who contradicts. She gestured to the tablet. You rushed. You forced overrides you didn't need. The man's eyes flicked to the screen. Just once. It was enough. The security chief moved instantly, slamming the door shut and re-engaging the lock. Now! The lights flared. The room plunged into emergency brightness. The man spun back, anger flashing. You don't understand what you're doing. Mara met his gaze, steady. I understand perfectly. The tablet updated again. Secondary, subject, identified. The man's phone buzzed. He looked down, and for the first time he stopped smiling. The billionaire laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. Looks like the witness found its voice. The man's jaw tightened. You think this ends here? Mara shook her head. No. She stepped back, hands still visible, posture calm. I think this is the part where you realize, she said, that the line you wrote wasn't a command. The man glared at her. Then what was it? Mara answered softly. A confession. Sirens began to wail somewhere deep in the building, real ones this time. The clock hit 0. The sirens didn't belong to the hotel. That was the first thing the man in the grey suit understood, and the last thing he expected. He looked toward the ceiling, listening. The sound wasn't panicked. It was layered. External response folding into internal alarms, perfectly synchronized. Too clean. That's not public emergency, he said slowly. Mara nodded. No. The billionaire leaned back in his chair for the first time all night. You said the witness would contradict him. Mara kept her eyes on the man. It just did. The tablet on the wall refreshed again. Corroboration, threshold met, independent log streams locked. The attorney let out a shaky breath. What does that mean? The security chief answered without looking away from the grey-suited man. It means the record can't be altered anymore. The man's jaw clenched. You think logs win wars? I think they end careers, Mara said. He turned to her sharply. You inserted yourself to poison the data. No, Mara replied. I inserted myself to balance it. The man laughed once, short and sharp. You think they'll believe a waitress over me? Mara didn't flinch. They won't have to. She reached into her apron pocket and placed something else on the table. Not a weapon, a slim storage drive. The billionaire stared. You copied data. Mara shook her head. I mirrored access. The man took a step forward. That belongs to me. The security chief moved between them instantly. Not anymore. The man sneered. You think this protects you? Mara met his gaze. No, I think it ends you. The attorney frowned. What's on it? Mara didn't answer him. She answered the man. The part you didn't schedule, she said. Your cleanup. The man's eyes flickered. Just once. That was enough. You always planned to walk out, Mara continued. You seeded credentials, forced conditional transfers, then erased the human trail. No voices, no faces. The billionaire's voice was cold. Except now. Mara nodded. Except now. The man exhaled slowly, recalculating. You're very good. So are you, Mara said. That's why this almost worked. Almost, he repeated. He straightened his jacket, composure returning. You still lose. You're unauthorized. You accessed restricted systems. They'll bury you with procedure. Mara smiled faintly. That's why I needed you in this room. The attorney stiffened. What do you mean? Mara gestured around them. Witnesses. The man's smile vanished. The security chief's earpiece crackled. Containment teams on your level. 30 seconds. The man looked at Mara. You could have walked away. Mara's voice was steady. So could you. He nodded once. Fair. Then he lunged. Not at Mara, but at the tablet. The security chief slammed into him, driving him back into the wall. The attorney shouted. The billionaire stood, chair clattering behind him. The tablet flickered but stayed lit. Mara didn't move. She counted. 3, 2. The door burst open. Uniformed responders flooded the room. Not hotel security, not police, but a hybrid response team with neutral insignia and clipped efficiency. Hands visible, one of them barked. The man froze. For the first time, uncertainty cracked his expression. Mara raised her hands calmly. The billionaire did the same. The attorney stumbled back. The security chief stepped aside. The lead responder looked at the tablet, then at the man in grey. "Secondary subject confirmed," he said. "You're coming with us." The man laughed softly. "On what charge?" The responder didn't smile. "Conspiracy to falsify independent compliance records." The man's gaze snapped to Mara. "You really are a translator," he said quietly. Mara met his eyes. "I translate consequences." They cuffed him without ceremony and led him out. The room exhaled as one. The billionaire sank back into his chair, rubbing his face. "It's done." Mara shook her head. "Not yet." The attorney looked at her. "What else could there be?" Mara turned to the window again. "Now comes the part," she said, "where the witness explains why." The tablet updated one final time. Primary subject review. Pending. The billionaire stiffened. "Primary subject?" Mara looked at him. "That's you." The word primary settled into the room like dust after an explosion. The billionaire stared at the tablet, then at Mara. "That's not possible." Mara didn't answer him right away. She watched the responders secure the room, watched the attorney get quietly escorted to the side, watched the security chief speak in low, controlled sentences into his earpiece. Everything was being recorded now. That was the point. "You were never the target," Mara said at last. "You were the environment." The billionaire laughed weakly. "You said I was leverage." "You were," she agreed. "Until you stayed." His smile faded. "Stayed?" "You could have left," Mara said, the moment the situation turned unstable. "You didn't." The security chief looked over. He already understood. "That's intent," the chief said quietly. The billionaire snapped his head toward him. "Intent to do what?" "To allow the operation to continue," the chief replied. "Once you were aware." The attorney protested. "That's a stretch." Mara shook her head. "Not in systems like this." She stepped closer to the table and tapped the tablet once, pulling up a layered timeline. "From the moment you were informed," she said, "every second you remained here without triggering a full shutdown became tacit consent." The billionaire's face drained of color. "You told me staying was safer." Mara met his eyes. "I told you it would buy time." "For you," he said. "For the truth," she corrected. The security chief folded his arms. "He could argue coercion." Mara nodded. "If he had panicked, if he had tried to flee, if he had ordered a hard stop." She looked at the billionaire. "You did none of those." The billionaire whispered, "Because you told me not to." "And you believed me," Mara said softly. "That's the problem." The room fell silent again. The responders finished cataloguing devices, tagging surfaces, sealing access points. One of them approached the tablet, reviewed the screen, then looked up. "Primary subject review requires statement," he said. The billionaire straightened instinctively. "I want counsel." "You have it," the responder replied. "Recorded." The attorney stiffened. "I am not." "You are present," the responder said evenly. "That's sufficient." Mara stepped back, giving the billionaire space. This part wasn't hers to lead anymore. "State your understanding of the events," the responder instructed. The billionaire opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. "There was an intrusion," he said. "We were made aware. We attempted to contain." The responder nodded. "And why did you not evacuate?" The billionaire's gaze flicked, just for a second, to Mara. "Because you told me to," he almost said. "Instead, we believed evacuation would escalate risk." The responder glanced at the tablet. "Based on whose assessment?" Silence stretched. The billionaire swallowed. "The waitress." The word hung there, Absurd and damning. The responder's eyes lifted. Name? Mara, the billionaire said. Just Mara. The responder typed it in. Mara felt the system catch her name like a hook. The responder looked up again. And why did you trust her? The billionaire's voice dropped. Because she was right. The security chief closed his eyes. The attorney exhaled slowly. The responder nodded once, as if confirming something inevitable. That's sufficient, he said. The tablet updated. Primary. Subject status. Complicated. The billionaire slumped back in his chair. What does that mean? It means, the responder replied, that you are no longer clean. Mara felt the weight of the night finally shift. Not lift. Shift. The billionaire looked at her then. Not angry, not amused, just tired. You could have walked away, he said. Mara nodded. You already said that. Why didn't you? Mara considered him for a long moment. Because if I had, she said, you'd still believe this was a misunderstanding. The billionaire let out a hollow laugh. And now? Now, Mara said. You know it was a test. The responder turned to her. You will need to come with us as well. Mara nodded immediately. I expected that. The billionaire frowned. You're arresting her. No, the responder said. We're documenting her. Mara allowed herself one breath of relief. As they moved toward the door, the billionaire called out, Wait! Mara turned. He stood slowly straightening his jacket. Habit, not confidence. What happens to me? He asked. Mara looked at the tablet, then back at him. You lose control, she said, gradually, publicly, without drama. The billionaire winced. And you? Mara's expression didn't change. I go back to being invisible. He studied her. You don't sound like someone who wants that. Mara met his gaze. I sound like someone who knows the cost of being seen. The responders waited. Mara turned and walked out with them, through corridors that no longer felt like a trap. Behind her, the private dining room stayed sealed. A witness chamber. They didn't put Mara in handcuffs. They didn't apologize either. She walked between two responders through corridors that had lost their shine, past doors that now wore small adhesive seals, past staff who stared without understanding why a waitress was being escorted like a liability. The elevator ride down was silent. When the doors opened into a secured holding area, temporary, sterile, efficient, the lead responder gestured to a chair. Sit, he said. Not unkindly. Mara did. A tablet was placed on the table in front of her. The same neutral interface. The same quiet authority. You understand, the responder said, that you're not cleared. Mara nodded. I never was. And that tonight doesn't make you a hero. I didn't ask it to. The responder studied her for a long moment. Why were you really here? Mara leaned back, choosing her words carefully. Not because she was afraid, but because precision mattered. Because the man you took, she said, has done this before. Smaller scale. Quieter buildings. People who didn't have money to push back. The responder's eyes sharpened. You've been tracking him? Yes. Why not bring it to us sooner? Mara met his gaze. Because until tonight, there wasn't a witness. Silence settled. The responder nodded slowly. You knew someone like him would overreach. I knew he'd get arrogant, Mara said. People who write systems forget they still live inside them. The tablet chimed softly. Documentation. Complete. The responder picked it up, scanned it, then slid it back to her. You're free to go, he said. Mara blinked once. That's it? For now, he replied. You're flagged. But you're not charged. She stood, smoothing the front of her uniform out of habit. What happens next? She asked. The responder hesitated. For you? Yes. He considered her honestly. Nothing official. Mara nodded. That was what she'd expected. She walked out through a side exit that smelled like rain and concrete, not luxury. The city greeted her the way it always had, indifferent, loud, alive. Across the street, a black car idled, not threatening, waiting. The billionaire sat inside, alone in the back seat, jacket folded beside him like a discarded version of himself. He lowered the window. Mara, he said. No edge left in his voice, just fatigue. She stopped, but didn't step closer. They're dismantling my partnerships, he continued, quietly, just like you said. She nodded. That's how systems correct. He watched her for a moment. You ruined my night. She almost smiled. You invited me. A beat. He exhaled. You could work for me. Mara shook her head immediately. You wouldn't survive that. His mouth twitched, despite himself. You always talk like this? Only when people think they're untouchable. The driver shifted. The car waited. The billionaire's voice dropped. What are you going to do now? Mara looked up at the hotel, lights still on, pristine, pretending nothing had happened. Disappear, she said. He nodded slowly. You're good at that. She met his eyes one last time. So are people who learn too late. She turned away. As she walked down the block, she reached up and unclipped the earpiece from her collar. Let it fall into a trash can without looking back. By the time she reached the corner, she was just another woman in the city. No uniform, no access card, no name anyone would remember. Behind her, the hotel would spend months explaining a night it couldn't erase. Somewhere else, another system would hum quietly, waiting to be read correctly. Mara blended into the crowd, invisible again. Exactly where she worked best,